How's it going, guys? We are O2 Productions and we are independent filmmakers. If you haven't already, check out our first feature length film that we're currently working on, The Pitch. But today, we have our very first movie review that we're going to be putting up on the channel. Yeah, just to give you guys some content and give you guys an idea of what sort of movies we're into, what we like about certain movies, what we don't like about certain movies. It helps you guys understand us, and it's a fun thing for us to do. You know, we watch a lot of
Yeah,
movies together. Should be pretty fun. So,
I
what
think
did we
so.
just watch?
Well, we literally just got back from watching at the theater, Final Destination Bloodlines,
Yep. This is
and
Thursday night.
Thursday
Literally,
night
we're filming
prime
this.
time.
We just got back from the theater.
Yes,
Literally 15 minutes ago.
yeah.
Set up all
So
our stuff.
apologies if I'm a little out of it. I'm
Yes.
I'm usually tired around like 7 p.m. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Apologies if we're a little bit sluggish, but we want to
yeah,
get this. We really want to try to do it like right after to get our
mm.
immediate reactions. We haven't even fully discussed it. I literally was telling him before, like, I want to save it so that
yeah,
we actually have a good conversation here.
right.
But super simple. Again, we're not movie reviewers, we're independent filmmakers.
Yes,
So don't judge us on our complete mess of a structure that we will have to this.
right.
But my idea is we're going to start with our number one strongest positive, or
Mm.
one or two strongest positives. Like, what are the big things that stood out that were good? And then kind of just work our way down from there and then get to the negatives towards the end. That's the general idea. We're going to start trying to avoid spoilers as much as possible.
Mm.
No promises. So we're a light spoiler warning to start. But
Yeah,
then when we really we'll get into more significant spoilers if we feel it's necessary, which I think it will be for
yeah,
this.
probably, maybe,
We will
yeah.
have that towards the end of the review, and then you guys can click off if you haven't seen it. But
Mm.
we will get into it. So this is Final Destination Bloodlines. This is the sixth installment in the franchise,
Yes.
just releasing technically officially tomorrow, Friday, but
Tomorrow.
we saw it Thursday night showing at
Mm.
our local theater.
Yeah,
It was a pretty good time. What'd you think of it, Mr. Carter?
I thought it was like so first, a little history. I've only seen the first and second Final Destination movies, so I can't say I'm an expert necessarily in the Final Destination franchise. We did watch before going the Dead Meat YouTube channel
Yes.
about just recapping like all the carnage count and just like the overall aspect of all the films, so that helped a little bit. But as far as this one, I thought it was pretty damn good. Just like maybe not even knowing like the whole history of it. But yeah, I thought like the script was like excellently written, like everything, how everything like tied in together. Um, I really liked. I don't think I really disliked any of the characters, which is really surprising to say because usually all films have that one character where you're like, ah, if he dies, he
Yep.
dies, you know. But no, I liked all the characters in this, which was pretty cool. And yeah, just like how everything was like structurally planned out and like happened throughout the film, I thought was like perfectly executed. So I think this was the best acted Final Destination movie that I've seen. I mean, I've only seen two, so I can't really, you know, say I'm an expert. But from the ones I've seen, I think this is definitely the best acted one as well as just layout too.
Yeah.
So
The context is actually a really good idea, which we should do
right,
actually.
mm,
That's a good idea for the future, actually, because yes, you are slightly less familiar,
right,
significantly less familiar, I'd say, than I am. But that being
uh,
said, I'm very familiar with the first two. I've seen all five. I'm pretty sure. I'm not entirely sure about five because
yeah,
my memory is very limited on three, four, and five. And I think that just kind of tells you about those movies. We're
yeah,
we may or may not do a ranking of these. We probably will be.
yeah,
We need to get through three, four, and five though, because we've only seen one and two together, and I need to be
yes.
refreshed. He needs to see them for the first
I need
time.
to see them.
So we're gonna get to that. But still, context. I have seen all five
Mhm,
of the previous ones, mostly know one and two. And we're gonna keep the comparing
mhm,
of them away for now until we get to the ranking. We'll do
yeah,
that then. But I totally agree with everything you already said. Let's get
mhm.
back to this movie, Bloodlines. I
Yeah,
totally agree with everything you said. Although I don't wouldn't say it's the strongest positive,
sure.
it's still a very much positive. Writing,
Mhm,
characters, respect. I 100% agree. These are the best characters I think
yeah,
this franchise has ever seen,
mhm,
which is very good.
yeah,
I think there's been a decent amount of solid characters, but not like a full lineup like this
yeah.
movie.
Like
I
they're
think
good.
very consistent all across the board.
Mhm,
My biggest positive though, I'm going to go with the cinematography and the sound design, kind of going for two at once. But
yeah.
I just think the way the sound design is just very just oh great way to
Yeah.
describe it. But the way that the cinematography and the sound design, it helps create the paranoia so well.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it really helps you also set up. You start to see the pieces come together, which you kind of get in the trailer with the cookout thing. Not
Hmm.
going to get into spoilers or anything,
Yeah.
but that cookout sequence, how it shows the bits and pieces. It does that throughout the movie, and it's
Mm.
really good.
Like the suspense of like
Yes,
the building up
and
of
it
it.
it
Yeah.
it does that a lot more than the other movies. The other movies kind of
Right.
just relied on the premonitions to be like, okay, you know where this might go, but without even using premonitions all the time, it
Uh-huh.
just shows bits and pieces, and you're like, oh, what could happen with that? What could happen with that? And I think that was done
Yeah.
really well in the sounds of like the pieces coming together, things
Yeah.
breaking, things cracking,
Hmm.
whatever. Just sounded really cool, and it kept you on the edge of your seat, and sometimes caught you off guard in a lot of
Yeah, I
ways.
did jump once. I don't know if you saw me. I'm
I
not
had a
gonna
couple
lie.
jumps too.
Yeah.
It was pretty
Yeah.
scary too. I think
It
that's a
was.
I mean that's a
Yeah,
pretty big thing to talk about with a horror movie.
it
I
was.
think
Like
it was pretty scary. I
the suspense was pretty good. I
Yeah,
like that a lot.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
It built the
Mhm.
suspense as well as having the scares and the
Right.
kills. I
Mhm.
think should we get into the kills? I think the kills are really good
I also
for the
agree.
most part.
Yeah.
For the most part, I think I have
Uh,
to save it for the spoilers, but
yeah.
there's only one that I can think of that I'm not
I
as
wanna
big on,
yeah,
but I'll save it for the spoilers.
I wanna think if I'm thinking of which one you're thinking. If you're thinking like think yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm very positive on this movie.
Mhm.
Again, character's really good. What else can I talk about? Just the story. This has a very complete story, and it's very
Yes.
much about family and
Family.
family, and
Yeah.
and about lost connections and
Mhm.
reforming connections and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's a much needed return to that. And I think they
Mhm.
they still balance I think earlier on in the movie, maybe like first act or so, it felt like they kind of were losing out on the kills because it felt like they were really trying to build the story.
Right.
But I think it ended up paying off.
Oh,
It
it
had a
did.
really good
Yeah.
balance, I would say,
Mhm.
of still giving those crazy kills that Final Destination always offers, and also still making you connect with the characters and having
Yes.
a pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
So I think that was really
Yeah,
good.
you're kinda like rooting for the characters.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
absolutely was. Yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely was in this one. And I can't say that for all the movies. That's for
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure those of you familiar with the franchise can agree with that.
Right. Just like the callbacks, I thought those were kinda good
There
too.
were some nice
Yeah.
callbacks. Oh, we have to talk about Tony Todd.
Yes. Yes.
They, as someone who's familiar with the whole franchise,
Mhm.
loves Tony Todd, rest in peace.
Yeah.
They, in my opinion, did Tony Todd
Justice.
so
Yeah.
much justice. They
Mhm.
did him so right.
Oh, yeah.
The dialogue they had written for him,
Mhm.
his performance, the timing of him in the story, it all fits.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit to add in the spoilers to that, but it just fits. It's
Mhm.
really fitting. It's a really good moment. It
Yeah.
really is having him on screen for that
No,
last
yeah.
time. And I think I have to commend the people behind this movie just for that alone. Never mind
Yeah.
the fact that the movie as a whole is
No, no.
quite good, and you'll see that in the rating, which we will say at the end,
Right.
which I should have mentioned in the beginning. But
Yeah. No, yeah, I thought the Tony Todd cameo was definitely my favorite scene in the whole movie.
honestly,
I won't say what that was, but like just how they tied him into like the overall franchise story was just like, dude, I was like, oh my god, I was like,
yeah,
oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. But like,
yep,
yeah, I thought that was the best scene in the whole
yep.
movie. So yeah,
And actually, another thing would be I want to mention in the positives, still in the positives, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
We've already been in the positives
There's a
for a long
lot of
time, but
positives.
there are a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
positives. The There's a lot of subversions in here as well, or
mm,
twists, if you will,
yeah,
where because of how I mentioned about the way they set up paranoia is so good in this movie, and then they'll then break that because you won't know what's coming. So sometimes they'll
right,
make it appear like something's going to happen, and then something shifts in either the narrative or just in Death's design, and you don't know exactly where it's going to go. But the pieces were still already set up,
right,
so then when it does happen, you're not like I don't think I was ever like, oh, that was there or that was a thing. It was
yeah,
always like set up, and also in the dialogue as well. There were a lot of setups and payoffs in there
yeah.
as well that were really good. Again, the script just really good.
Yeah, there were a few unexpected twists, but like those twists didn't derail from the overall story and how everything was like aligned perfectly. So I thought that was like well executed also.
The humor,
Yes.
there was surprisingly really good comedy in this,
Hmm. Yeah.
but it was fitting. Like dark humor
Yeah.
and just general just comedy,
Hmm.
really strong,
Yeah.
surprisingly strong. Again, dare I say some of the best in the franchise, if not the
Right.
best. We'll get to that in the ranking.
Yeah.
But really good humor as well in this movie.
I thought so.
So now on to the negatives. Will just start with saying
Yeah. Yeah.
there aren't many for me,
Hmm.
and
I
they're not super significant.
hmm.
Um, I would say I think I mean one of my biggest negatives is going to be a spoiler, so I'm going to save it for a second. But
Mm.
I mean, I think maybe the opening. Oh, we didn't mention the opening in the positive. The opening is pretty well done. I mean, I kind of talked about with the cinematography and stuff.
Mhm.
Everything was there. Everything was
Right.
there, and it all connected pretty well. I would say a very slight negative would just be I think they spent maybe a touch too much time with it. Not even necessarily just in the beginning because they really wanted to build out the characters,
Hmm.
but they also went back to it a couple times. This is already a pretty significant nitpick, I'll be honest. I
Right.
don't think this was really that much of an issue. But if I had to find something like that isn't the spoiler,
Hmm.
I they might have spent a touch extra time than what they had to in the opening and
Yeah.
going back to
Yeah.
that sequence, but
It was
I
fine.
I
I didn't really.
I thought it was mostly fine too, but yeah,
Well.
they maybe
Yeah.
could have shaved off on the edges, but it was still there
Right.
was so much style to it, and I was
Mhm.
still it doesn't take away very much.
No, actually, I just thought of like pretty much maybe my only negative. I felt like the ending was kind of rushed a little bit.
Okay.
So like
I sort of agree with that actually as
I
well.
guess like
A little bit. Yeah.
the third act kind of ended and transitioned
It
into
was a
like
bit abrupt,
the
wasn't it?
yeah, and then transitioned into like the ending. I was like, oh,
Mm.
that's it. I was like, okay, but
Yeah.
like I wasn't
And I think
unhappy with that.
that might have been partially because of everything being drawn out a little more. Like the
Right.
first and second acts are really like they're I wouldn't say they're like completely stretched out, but like they're just really fleshed out and they're
Right.
really
Hmm.
in a very good way. Like these characters, like it takes its time building up the characters, but also setting up the kills and doing all that.
Hmm.
And it was a bit abrupt at the end.
Yeah.
Are we good
Yeah.
to get into spoiler territory?
I don't know if I want to spoil anything. I feel like I've said everything I need to say without
I just have a
having to
little
do
bit.
anything.
Some of my stuff's borderline not even spoilers.
Okay.
Like I can sort of avoid it,
Yeah.
but for now, I mean, we'll just this is going to be your spoiler warning.
Mm.
So from here, I'll probably put up an overlay or something,
Yeah.
and then I'll take it off. You guys can skip ahead. There'll probably be a timestamp as well for when the spoilers are over. You can skip to the end of that. I'll make sure nothing gets picked up, but this should be pretty brief. Spoiler negative is the final deaths. And this is a big spoiler, so please, if you're still here,
Yeah.
get away.
Get
But
away.
I thought the final deaths looked really bad because it
Really?
was so CGI heavy.
Well, I mean, you can't necessarily like.
The C
Yeah.
actually we didn't really talk about that, but
Yeah.
I think there's a pretty good mix of CGI and practical, and the CGI mostly looks good.
Yes.
But the final was just so over the top, and I feel like it overdid the homage too with the logs as well
Yeah.
in reference to Final Destination 2.
Right.
I was like, all right. I was just not a big fan of those deaths at the very end. I understand them dying. I actually
Right.
really liked that because I thought for a second they were gonna let them live, but then they
Mm.
didn't.
Yeah.
Huge spoiler.
No, actually, yeah.
But
No,
I was not a huge fan of that death. I just didn't like
yeah. Well, I was
it was a CGI
confused.
mess, and
Yeah.
then it was just sudden and it was like then the logs, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
you're
Well,
trying a little too
I
much,
kind of figured they would die, but not in the way that you knew because you know more about it than I do.
yeah.
But like the dad in it, I thought was connected, which is why I was like, oh wait, wasn't he supposed to die? And
Yeah.
then like, why would they still be alive if he's still alive? And I'm like, how are they gonna die? Like
Yeah.
I could see them dying in the end. So I was like expecting it, but not expecting it. I was like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm like, okay, cool. And then it happened. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
oh well.
I
So,
thought they explained
yeah,
it pretty well, but
yeah,
I can understand a bit of confusion there,
yeah,
especially if you're less familiar.
hmm, yeah.
And I believe that summarizes all of my thoughts.
That's
So,
all I
are
got.
you ready to
Yeah,
get to final ratings? Then we can just
I
wrap
think
this
so.
up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty good.
Okay. Do you want to take the lead?
No, I want you to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I actually haven't taken the chance to actually look at where I think it sits, but honestly, I think with all that being said, my final rating for Final Destination Bloodlines
Mm.
is a 9.5 out of 10.
Wow.
I really like this movie. And
Wow.
yeah,
I was not expecting that. I'm
you were
not
not
gonna lie.
expecting that.
I,
That was it was
yeah.
it really was fantastic. Like I said, the negatives I said were mostly like sort of just nitpicky.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it. Might be a 9, but I'm
Yeah.
honestly I'm pretty sure this is gonna end up being a 9.5 for me.
Mm.
It was a really good movie.
I expected you to like it, but not that much. I thought you were gonna give it like a 8.5 or something like that. But yeah,
That's not too far off, but no, I really enjoyed it.
yeah.
I might be a little biased because of the Tony Todd segment. I'm not gonna lie. That Tony Todd segment was
It
really
was
good, dude.
fantastic.
It
Yeah.
was really good.
Mm. Um. Yeah.
What about you?
I would probably give it a 9.
Wow,
I
nice.
also really liked it a lot. I believe this is my first movie of 2025 seeing in the theater, if I'm right.
Sinners.
Oh yeah, I lied. I saw Sinners. Yeah, I saw. See, oh, I this that's a whole
I kind
conversation.
of wish we had started this sooner because I would have liked to
Yeah,
have talked about Sinners,
yeah, that's a whole different
but we're not gonna get into
conversation.
that.
I
Yeah,
kind of forgot I saw it. If that gives you a little hint into what I thought about it, but
we're not getting into that.
yeah,
But
that's a different story. But yeah, this was definitely the best movie so far of 2025, and definitely recommend it to anybody and everybody. And honestly, I could be wrong. You probably tell me this, but I don't really think you need to see every single Final Destination in order to understand it and enjoy it. So
that is a very good thing to
yeah,
say. I was gonna say all that as well, just on my
yeah,
own, but I'm glad you mentioned that.
uh-huh,
I 100% agree with that. I would recommend this to any horror fan.
yeah,
Period.
yeah,
Final Destination fans, absolutely. What are you doing if you're not seeing this as a Final Destination fan?
yeah,
Really good.
right,
I would not consider myself that much a Final Destination fans. Bleh. You'll see eventually in the
yeah,
ranking.
yeah,
Apart from the original, I'm not super high on most of the sequels, but
mhm.
this one really enjoyed.
Very, very good,
Really good. If
very,
you're a
very
horror
good.
fan of any kind, I think you should check it out.
Oh
If you're
yeah,
a movie fan of any kind, I think you should check it out. But obviously, if it's not your sort of thing, maybe it's not your sort of thing. But
right.
honestly, I think anybody can enjoy this movie.
Hmm.
I am
Primarily,
primarily, I would consider
yeah,
myself a bit more of a horror fan, so I
right,
also may be a little bit biased in that direction.
right.
But I'm a movie fan. I
Hmm.
love movies. I think this movie's fantastic.
Yeah,
Final Destination Bloodlines.
hmm,
You should check it out.
definitely.
Any final words? Oh, and I agree that you don't need to see the rest of the franchise either. I think it helps with context a little bit to obviously understand the rules, but they explain the rules.
Yeah.
And also, having seen the movies, it also gave me an appreciation for the Tony Todd thing.
Yes.
But just knowing that he did pass away
Hmm.
last year,
Yeah.
just knowing that going into the movie, knowing, the actor he was
Hmm.
and how significant he was in the horror community and especially in the Final Destination franchise,
Right.
that's all you really need to know about that. But for the most part, you don't need to see the other movies.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, might as well just
and you
watch the
might, and you'll
movie.
get the notes and homages if you are familiar with the original movie. So
Yeah.
there is that as well. But it doesn't at all take away from the experience. It only adds to it, which I think is the
Right.
best way to do it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I have to say.
That's all I got. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. So that is our review of Final Destination Bloodlines, the first review we're putting on our channel.
Number
And
one.
let me tell you, it's a
Yeah.
good one.
It is.
I'm glad it turned out that way because I wasn't sure what to expect coming into this movie.
Yeah, we're starting
Actually,
off
we
strong.
should use
So.
expectations like at the start, like what we
Oh
expect.
yeah.
Like we should have the context. We should have our expectation. See, we're figuring out.
Yeah.
Because I
As we
expected
go.
a pretty mid movie to be honest.
I went in with zero expectations because again, I'm not super familiar with it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna leave this expectations thing on the end for this, but in the future, we're sorting out the details of how we're gonna do this. It'll be much better as we keep going with this.
Right.
Again, we are not movie reviewers.
Right.
We are filmmakers.
Yes.
Check out the pitch. We have a playlist
Well,
on
we
our
have sneak
channel,
peeks on all the good stuff, and yeah.
and we're still working on it to this day. But in the
Yes.
meantime, when we're free from shooting or
Mm.
editing or whatever,
Right.
we're starting to do movie reviews. We're gonna do rankings. We're gonna rank the Final Destination franchise, and there's another movie that's in another franchise that's coming up very soon.
Oh yes.
Should we? Maybe we could leave like a teaser for it, or should we just tell them what it is?
Um, it's action. I didn't tell
I
you
think
more.
it's pretty easy to figure out what it is,
Yeah.
considering there's not a lot coming out in the
It
next
comes
couple
out
of
in a
weeks.
week.
It comes
Yeah.
out in 1 week.
If that gives you a hint. So
Oh yeah, maybe we could just leave like a clue.
We
Is there
gave
any
two.
sort of hint that we could give? We've already given enough. They know what it
Yeah.
is. But
Hopefully,
maybe
yeah.
maybe in the future we'll give
Mhm.
like a one-word hint or something. That could be like a
That'd be
fun thing to
cool.
do. You know what I mean?
It would be
I think
cool.
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
See, we're working out the
Yeah.
kinks, but that's our
As
review.
we
We're
go
gonna leave
through.
it there. I think
Yeah.
we've gone long enough here, but
Mhm.
those are our thoughts after seeing Final Destination Bloodlines. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe.
Mhm.
If you want to see more of our reviews, maybe
Right.
check out our The Pitch. Also,
Right.
do that
Mhm.
and go see the movie
Yes.
in theaters.
Mhm.
I think the theater experience definitely helps
Oh
too.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's definitely a theater movie. Yeah.
yep. All right.
But yeah. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for future videos.